Are you struggling with your layouts when you have image and text on a website? We're all guilty of sometimes following the norm where we have text, image, or image, text. Can we be a little bit different? And I'm going to show you some examples. I am using Elementor, but I'm going to be using containers of just some different types of layouts of how you can be a little bit more imaginative. So this should be quite familiar to a lot of you, right? Text, image, image, text, like that. And if you're wondering what these borders are with the dots here, this is two containers. So we have a container over here, and then we have two child containers. In all honesty, you could have created this with just one container with some careful placement, you know, set it as a row, space between and stuff like that. But I just want to show you that if you had two child containers, you might have your headline, you might have text, you might even have a button, and you have your image on the side. Or you might flip it and go with something like this at the bottom. And this is kind of what we see a lot of on websites. And it can get quite boring and repetitive. Of course, the power of what you do here is influenced by the wording and the imagery. If your imageries are really boring, like images just look really dull and flat, it ain't going to help whatever text you put. And if your text isn't very enticing or exciting to read, again, it kind of doesn't complement the images at all. By the way, everything I'm going to show you is inside of a boxed width of 1000, okay? Because most of the time, that's what you are going to be working in when you are working with a text and image layout. So here's the first one. We have text and two images. It's pretty simple, right? You got your parent container, you might have three child containers inside. In one of them, you're using about a third of the estate for your headline and your text, and the other two, which are roughly a third as well each, you're going to go and stick in your image. Again, I do want to mention though, you could have done this with less child containers, but for anyone that is still using section and columns, or grid or another layout, this kind of just makes it easier to understand. And again, please ignore the dotted board radiuses over there, okay? Not the radius, the dotted borders, because I just want to show you where the containers actually sit. So this is just another way of demonstrating text where you're not now just doing text and one image, you're now breaking it up to have two images. But you could change this even a little bit more by making your text be wider. So look, this is what you get if it's all equal. And this is what you get if you now were to make this, say, be a little bit more. Now, it might not be a full-on 50%. It might only be 40 or 45%. But can you see the difference that makes in the layout? So you've got your text. It might be a lot of text, you know, and you're expecting the reader to read all of that. Give them a couple of complementary images, and the images don't have to be the same one. It could be maybe, let's say you're advertising bags, there could be two different angles of what you're showing. You could even put an animated GIF in here as well. So you got an image, and you got an animated GIF that just keeps looping. It doesn't have to be a video with the play button. Remember, use your imagination. Here's another example, which is basically a copy of what I had above. But now I've gone and dropped in a couple of extra images. This is all inside of one container. This is a row layout using the wrap functionality. So within this child container, we have 100% going over here inside the child container, right? 100% for the headline, 100% for the text, and about 40-45%. In fact, I can tell you what it is if we go here. It's about 47.5% for the two images sat side by side. And then the two images that we had over on the right, I've just made them taller. Now imagine that without the dotted borders going around those three child containers. Again, a lot of text. There might have been a call to action button as well, but you're breaking it up. You're not compacting too much into a smaller state. You are letting it breathe because we do have spacing there. But you're giving them something to look at to stimulate the mind. And if we transform that a stage further, let's make the images be a little bit shorter in height, and we'll drop in a bit of text below and above it. I'm now giving you quite a bit of information there, but can you see your eyes are dancing a little bit in terms of reading? And you might take no interest in what we say here, but I hope these images here support the text here. And then this just might be complementary information, especially if you're selling a product or you're showcasing services. And this is just another example of how, rather than having just two images on the right hand side, why don't you create a bit of like a metro or even almost like a masonry effect going on here? It's really simple. Just control the height or the width or the size of your images and you can create something fantastic like this. I'm going to zip back to what we had over here just for a moment. Look, text, one image, or you go for text and 3 images. What do you feel when you look at this? I'd love to hear in your comments, right? So the text and the image metro, what do you feel when you see it? Remember, please ignore the dotted borders that we have here. This is just to show you where the child containers are. But what feelings do you get? Do you feel like you're getting more out of it? Whereas just one image might not even have been your best image, right? But when you start to show off a good image and 2 smaller images, you know, maybe your resolution's not so great, right? So don't put a massive image on because everyone will spot the pixelated blurry images or the noise and the friction. Make it smaller. Now this is one of my favorites and there's an alternate version of this that I'm going to show you in a moment. This is where you have 2 child containers. One of the containers might be about 60-65% child container 1 and child container 2 might be 30%. Remember, you are going to have a bit of spacing in between. And in child container 1, you got your headline, you got your text, and you have an image as well. And it's kind of following the length of the text underneath. And you get this nice breakup. Rather than having too many images, I mean, I've already said having images is great, but sometimes you can have too many. And the detail in the images might become too busy. But a span effect, I mean, again, remember what we had originally, right? Text and image, and now look at this. But let me show you the one that I like much better than this. It's where you flip it and have the image at the top. Before you even get to the text, I'm pulling your eyes into the image, right? I want you to notice that. And then I've got the text to support it. Most of the time, isn't that how hero banners work in a way? You know, you might have your power image or your icon or your Lottie or something, and you got your wording, but you really want the image to grab the attention. Well, look at what we got going on here. And please do also remember, though, that when you do pick images, make sure they complement. Look at the colours we've got going on here. You know, the faded green and then the yellow. And then although we don't have yellow here, we do have the bright over here, the vibrance, so they kind of connect to one another. And when we get down here, well, it's interior, we got the candles, you can see here the lights, the greys. Make sure the images do not overly contrast, otherwise someone might look at it and go, well, what was the point of that? I hope you like what I'm showing you here. Please do hit like, subscribe, share, and let me know in your comments. This is just a variation of what we had above. This time we've just shrunken child container 1, and where we had the tall images, we've just duplicated it to now have 3 child containers. Again, just absorb and take in the different look you could have. How many websites have you built or you're building right now where you are sticking to the formula of text, image, image, text? A lot of us are guilty of doing that when we build our tutorials because we just want to get a tutorial out there. We're guilty of that. I am guilty of that, I know. And I'm going to make sure I try and dazzle things and mix things up a little bit for you in future. Now, this isn't one that I actively use a lot. But if you have got a lot of text and not a lot of images, and the quality of the images is not brilliant, you could almost get away with it by adding in like a stopgap image over here. So this is one child container. It could even be a container, a parent. Doesn't have to be a child, but we're using a child container. We've got our headline. We got our text. We have our second text. But because this is set as a row, this second text, the custom width is 65%. This image has the custom width of 32%. Look, you're probably wondering why is it not 35? Well, that's because we have a gap in between, okay? So 65 plus 35, they'd practically be touching one another. I want to have a gap in between. So what I'm doing is I'm giving you all the text. I've got an image. The quality's not great, so I don't want to make it too big or too tall. But I'm just going to add it in there to kind of give you something that complements the text. Now, this is a peculiar one that I have seen deployed, and if you're careful about it, it can really work for you. This is where you have maybe a parent container or a child container, and you have a transparent image, and then you got text. Now, if you have the transparent image, and I'll show you what it would look like if we were to remove the color over here. And if you've got a lot of white space going on all the way around, it might look very detached from the image. Now, it can work for you, believe me. I would regularly use something like this, and I don't care about how much white space I got. I like things to breathe. But if you give it a bit of a background color, and I've gone for a bit of a very light grey there, it almost contains everything into its own little section and container. So remember, imagine the borders are not over around here. You've got your header, you got your text, and you got your image, and it's all connected. Because there is a danger that if you have too many transparent images and text, and you're not careful with your spacing and the top and bottom and how close they are, people might start to misinterpret, well, does that image go with that text or that one? But when you self-contain them within a coloured area where you've given it a background, now I know that that text relates to that image. Maybe you've got a product and there's like 20 things you want to say about it. Obviously, don't say all 20 because then the page will get quite busy. Maybe use a bullet list. But maybe you want to demonstrate some key things about this dress that we have here. You could put the dress in the middle in a child container, and then to the left and right of it, you could have further child containers. Now, I have over here got 3 child containers, and then inside of this child container, I've got 3 grandchild containers and 3 over here. You don't have to lay it out like this, okay? You could easily get away with just having 1 child container, stick your items in, have columns, just make sure you sort out your margins or the spacing between them and make it work. However, sometimes by having grandchild containers like this, it makes it easier when you move to the mobile, because maybe on the mobile you might decide, okay, we're going to have them side by side, or maybe one underneath one another. But this again is another example of how you can showcase information without using the standard text image layout. And here's a variation of that. This time I'm only saying 4 things. So we've got grandchild containers inside child containers, and I've got my image on the left hand side or the right hand side. I always find that when you do stuff like this, it tends to work better for me personally when the image is on the left. I feel like I want to be drawn to the image, grab my attention, now tell me the detail. Whereas if you flip it, you're almost getting my brain to read the text before I look at the image, and maybe I'm like, oh, that's too much text, and I'll just keep scrolling. So grab me, hook me in. I hope you found a lot of these layouts quite stimulating on the eye. And I hope it gets you to think a little bit differently about how you would tend to lay out your text and images. Because look, let's just jump straight to that. That is the standard. We tend to stick to this formula way of doing it. And I would say, let's be a bit different. Let's give our clients on our own websites a little bit of joy and pleasure to read and look at. Hey, I'm Imran Web Squadron. I hope you like, subscribe, share, and follow. I'll see you soon.
Never break, always fight, never quit, do it right, play the game, win it life, have no shame, there's no time, feel the pain, live the grind, I could change, in my mind, pick a lane, commit and climb, the only way to win it life, I never miss that fact, taking big swings, bitch, hand me the bat, put me in the ring, you'll go out in a bag.